To follow on from this session, we now have a special feature from HKSTP to share with us the question, which many corporates may ask, why did you dare to try, and do you dare to adopt? HKSTP and Hysan are working together to nurture startup and offer innovators with a real-world environment for POC trial with focuses in smart living, smart economy, smart mobility, and sustainability. And in this session, we'll explore the possibilities of PropTech in a strategic level and how technologies come into play for the real estate industry. So we're welcoming back Ricky Loy and Eugene Hsia to join us as panelists for this topic. And please welcome to our moderator, Asia PropTech's co-founder, Leo Low.
Good morning, Ricky and Eugene. Yeah, it's up to you to take off the mask. I think we are okay, right? Yeah. All right. So happy to have Ricky and Eugene coming to ask the questions because I think we talk about PropTech for nearly a decade. Because I still remember I started Asia PropTech back to 2016. It's about 8 years already. To me, I think PropTech in Asia somehow is still lagging behind a bit, comparatively speaking. But I can see there are lots of catching up. So up to this moment, I just want to have a very first question about what have you seen the property sector transformation by the innovation so far? What kind of adoption and also what kind of PropTech is having of full potential, maybe in the coming 2 to 3 years. Maybe I let Ricky to share with us because you're the developer, you're the landlord. Yeah, any adoption?
Yeah, I think as you said, the name about PropTech come up in the last 6 to 10 years, right? But before that, when we talk about technology in our industry, particular property, it's all go back to the BMS. Honestly, that's the only name you have 20 years ago, BMS, Building Management System, that's all. And nowadays, for the last few years, you can see application of technology go into the BMS, go into the construction industry to some extent, although they're slow. And then you particularly go into the e-commerce. Yeah. The e-commerce go with a lot of technology getting into the e-commerce side. I think it's about sustainability. I think sustainability has pushed for technology a lot because we always talk about when you talk about you need to achieve the carbon neutralizations, you will find without technology is so far away from that kind of target.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think PropTech is such a buzzword. To me, before even this word appeared, there was BIM, for example, also a part of PropTech. So Eugene, any potential you can see in the coming 2 to 3 years, which areas or HKSTP is focusing on in terms of PropTech?
I think fundamentally you need to look at the whole property sector in different section of the life cycle, right? So from construction all the way to once you have the building up, how do you manage a lot of facilities management, BMS, right? How do you focus on the customers and so forth and so forth. I think fundamentally, say 10 years ago or even 15 years ago, the cost of adopting technology in the property sectors was still relatively high, right? So being in the very competitive market, naturally, developers will shy away from adopting a lot of technologies. But as the technologies matures, the price naturally comes down because there are more players, the access to technology is much easier and so forth. So we are seeing a lot of PropTech companies coming into Science Park these days, focusing on different segments within the life cycle. I think that's very exciting. So,
yeah, very good. So Ricky, with the real estate business in Hong Kong, what drives you to embrace innovation, and what kind of struggles, challenges you're facing in adopting the PropTech?
Yeah, I think it's from a business angle. It's always demand and supply, and always the kind of we are serving people. When people have different expectations, Nowadays, people have a high expectation about using technology in many ways, from efficiency, from sustainability, and also from kind of the personal behavioral changes. So these are the driver for main drive for us to adopt to technology. Second is all related to people again, because nowadays getting staff forces are so difficult. Particularly if you want to maintain a very good standard of services or whatever, from professional service to frontline services, you got to really spend so much on training. So it's come to the point about for those repetitive and but at the same time need very consistent standard work. The good way is to being do by machines rather than just a human being, and leave those kind face to the human being. I think that also made another driver for why we need to embrace it about technology.
Yeah, I totally agree with you because I'm also running my own business in the traditional real estate industry. Somehow it's not easy to get the talents in Hong Kong, or you need to pay the high price. So I also foresee, say, AI, say, big data, data science can somehow help us to run the real estate related business. I know that you two corporates joined hand to offer a real-world environment for POC to accelerate the disruption in the real estate industry. And I know that is about, the name is the Community Lab. So, or let's see the video about the Community Lab first, and then I will follow up some to ask some questions. So, yeah, Connie.
We are humans, not machines. We're something more. We desire to be a part of something bigger than ourselves, somewhere that allows to create values and contribute more. At HKSTP, we've been building the region's best ecosystem to enable pioneers and innovators to make a better place where you belong. Hysan, as the curator, is skilled at understanding the needs of our community. Our passion for improving people's quality of life through technology is the energy that keeps us moving. Lee Gardens area is a microcosm of our city. With a vision of bridging technology with people, we are committed to transforming Hong Kong into a smart city. At the Community Lab, we empower humans to innovate in partnership with the next-gen startups and corporate leaders of tomorrow. We create values in the business world. The Community Lab is where we experiment with the last-mile testing in the real world. HKSTP and Hysan will create limitless opportunities for innovators and enterprises to convert. Together, we connect people and innovations to make Hong Kong a smarter city.
Oh, cool. The Community Lab. So I'm not sure whether it's a sandbox or it's a co-working space or even something more. Can Ricky tell us more about what actually the Community Lab is?
May I take more than 1 minute, okay? Because I think this is, I need to start from a story, how I pitched Eugene when I first met him, okay?
You pitched
I pitched him, yeah. Because, you know, when we talk about the smart communities, because at that time we were all talking about smart cities, the big word about smart city. But when we look at smart city, we talk about all those technologies, the traffic light, the traffic control, all the kind of managing the city. But we don't have a pudong. We don't have a big piece of land that you could build a whole new things. That's not the real world, particular for Hong Kong or for other very mature cities. Even nowadays, if you go to Shanghai, you go to Puxi, you will never have a big piece of land. What you have is a piece of land, and then you have old building or existing infrastructure next to you. That's the real world. That if we want to do how to use technology to manage a city, you have to set the right scene. And then so that's a pitch I start with Eugene, because when we come to Causeway Bay, the Lee Gardens, we have 9 buildings there. When I first joined the company, people say, oh, you have a big landlord there, you have 9 buildings. but my buildings are all separated. They are not connected. So I have other stakeholders or other building, other owners next to me. So it's a kind of perfect real life situation. If I want that area to be good, if I want to manage that part of communities, I need to have a system that work together with them. I need to engage them. I need to take into account their need. So that's why when we come to that community lab, our concept is this is a community. How can we try to test those kind of technology ideas from Science Park to put it in the real life case? You have to tackle all this kind of 67 years old building need, while I have a new building just finished last year. They don't have building management system. How can any technology be applied in this kind of city setting? So I think so the big goal is to have all this kind of POC to test in the real life case to shaping their kind of application that can apply to the real life. And for Hysan themselves, our ambition is to, through this community lab, could we build a kind of app, a kind of practical, pragmatic, smart city model that can integrate all the useful in the application to bring values. So that's the story of it.
All right. So it sounds to me it's like a test bed. So just one more follow-up question before we go to Eugene to introduce the community lab. So do you think, Ricky, do you think it's a bit risky to test the product at your developments, at your buildings? Because somehow we don't know whether it's good or not. So can I say that Hysan is somehow quite brave to do that, to do maybe probably the first test bed, PropTech test bed in Hong Kong?
I think we are a bit bold, but at the same time, I think while everybody say we love Hong Kong, so Hysan as a culture also want to contribute to Hong Kong, and contributing to this test scene, to help Hong Kong test scene, is also one of the mission behind this community lab. As a kind of safety measure, good thing is we are not doing, say, space science technology. We are talking about application they're going to use in managing the cities, managing the communities. We've been doing this work for 99 years. We are celebrating 100 years next year. So we are doing 99 years about managing the city. That's why when we have the idea about community lab, the key thing is it's about kind of mapping. We have all the mentor to each of those cohort one company, so that for some of you, if you are talking sensor, the sensor about the vibration, we have the project manager engineer working with you. That's why while we do the testing, it doesn't mean that it's a wild test. It's a guided test.
Yeah, and anyhow, I think I appreciate it a lot because, as a real estate landlord in Hong Kong, the price per square foot is so high, and your company willing to sacrifice some spaces. I think that's should earn us some appreciation. Yeah. So Eugene, can you tell us more from your angle, and also why did you accept the pitching, as Ricky mentioned, or actually I think it's a collaboration. I know that. Okay. So yeah.
Absolutely a collaboration. So I've done startups in Silicon Valley, Singapore. So I've run large corporations, divisions worldwide, and so forth. So I've been in tech for many decades. One of the toughest thing about starting a company, especially in tech, is you lack real world applications or scenarios for you to really test out your ideas, your technologies, and so forth.
Especially PropTech.
Exactly, especially PropTech. So at Science Park, we do have a small areas, you can say, as part of the campus. We call the test bed to really test really early stage technologies, right? And then naturally, when the solution of the technologies matures, you need a much larger scale real world scenario to make sure that it works, right? So that's one of the fundamental ideas behind the community lab. And to tell you a funny story about the collaboration, how it started. I still remember that was about roughly 2 years ago when I first joined Science Park. Got a call from Ricky's office to say, would love to have a meeting to talk. So my initial thoughts was, Science Park used to sign a lot of MOUs. We do a lot of events and really showcase, photos of people standing on stages and so forth. And then really nothing happens afterwards, right? So my initial thought was, is this going to be another one of these, right? And so I was traveling to Causeway Bay to meet Ricky, kept thinking, in my mind, how am I going to be graciously turn him down, right? Essentially, and then we sat down, and then Ricky shared with me his whole vision of the Lee Gardens and the whole community, how he plans to transform the whole Causeway Bay, really visionary thoughts and ideas behind it. And then he said, I would really love to work with Science Park. You have over 1,000 companies. How can we collaborate in a much better way so that we can, Hysan can have a first hand on seeing the latest startups in terms of what they can do, right? So that's the beginning of the community lab. And then as we start executing the community lab, one of the things that I found truly inspiring was Ricky himself sits in every single meeting each startup, spend an hour and a half, really challenging them in terms of how the technologies needs to be customized, shifted to work in an area like Causeway Bay, right? So these are very valuable inputs for the startups to make their products much more competitive in that sense, right? So it's been an incredible collaboration so far, and lots of things we have.
Yeah, I'm surprised because Ricky is from the C-suite, so you still spend time in talking to different or each startups. That's really a great thing, to the PropTech sector, because they need to test back, actually. So Ricky mentioned about the cohort 1. Any pain points, any lesson learned that can share with us? Yeah.
I think I learned the word about nerd from the cohort 1.
Nerd, right? Okay.
And that's very interesting. That but without any negative meaning, because they are so focused in their R&D and about they love their technology, but we got to become a kind of a strict mentor to them, asking difficult questions and also trying to bring them to see the real case. I love one thing is about even IMB and also Excel Sensing is working with Asian chain. They're all testing in our area, and I love the chain story about they have the robot going to see all the condition of the back link of those very old buildings. Very difficult because sometimes you have to put the scaffolding up to check everything. They have the robot to do it, but so we're so happy to have that to start. But suddenly we find the robot cannot calm down. Okay, and how to do it? And I think our team have worked with them for a month or two to find a solution how to help them to make their kind of good application fit with the real life case. I mean that's very good, and also extra sensing when they have the data, they have the kind of fine tuning with our team for I think for the 3 months already. I think this kind of collaboration is the beauty of letting them to know how the application will bring the real value, and at the same time it's a reverse education to our own staff, the functional department, to be serious about when they talk about we want to support, we want to help the technology. So that means you also need to put in time and effort to help. It's not about money. Yeah. It's all about your commitment to into this kind of collaboration.
Yeah, I agree. The commitment, the heart, right? So yeah, thank you. How about Eugene? When we talk about fostering INT collaborations and building an ecosystem, say PropTech ecosystem or tech ecosystem, what Science and Technology Park is now doing, say, attract more startups from GBA or even from other countries? Yeah.
We are very aggressively recruiting companies all around the world. So not just GBA, but not just local, but really literally all around the world. Because from our angle, what we see is you really need a diversity in terms of experience, background, culture, to have new ideas to come in, right? I think fundamentally, when you talk about innovation, there are really two streams of thoughts, right? So the first one is incremental innovation, meaning that you see existing problems, you try to patch it with some sort of technology, make it work a little bit better, more efficient, more cost effective, and so forth. Those are incremental innovation. But when you talk about curve jumping innovation, normally it actually doesn't start with the technology. It starts with the business model, right? Something like an Airbnb or Uber, right? Fundamentally changes how people interact with technologies in that sense, right? So that perspective, for curve jumping innovation, you really need a large pool of brilliant minds to come from all over the world to share ideas, to collaborate, to talk, and so forth, right? I think the challenge for the ecosystem is, aside from the entrepreneurs or the technologists, right, there are actually many stakeholders around the ecosystem. So industries, definitely one of the biggest components, right? The government's one of the components, right? Driving new policies, regulations to support new technology adoptions. Even universities, for example, right? How do you cultivate the next generation of talent so that they have that really cutting edge, leading edge sort of mindset, right? That entrepreneurial spirit, right? How do you cultivate that? So you fundamentally need to change the way you teach in that sense, right? So many different layers, extremely difficult, but extremely fun at the same time. So.
Yeah, particularly I understand this too much because I'm also teaching real estate innovation at a Chinese University of Hong Kong as an adjunct assistant professor. Probably the very first PropTech or real estate innovation course with credits in Hong Kong. I'm planning to write a textbook as well. Maybe we can work together. Yeah, 政產學研 government, the industry, and also university. So last question, what's next for you two collaborations? I know that is called a last mile testing program. What's next for all the things, for the collaborations?
I just want to maybe, I haven't shared with Eugene much on that, but I guess what we want to do is to showcase the community lab model is a good model to help to incubate some good technology company of Hong Kong. I hope we can help one or two companies to become a very commercially viable and successful company so that we can give more confidence to all the startup to come to our lab, be bold to test it, and be open to address their application to the real world. I think that's very important. As I just mentioned about, sometimes we just said the lighter version. For us, what we want to do is, could we be the integrator of this technology into a kind of smart community model? I think that's our ambitions.
Very good.
So, like Ricky was saying, when we first started, we were talking about Hysan's properties in general, and then we sort of enlarged to the whole Causeway Bay area. So aside from testing different startups' technologies, right, the next step, I think, what we're trying to do is what we call the Digital Causeway Bay project, essentially starting on the data level. How do we get cross-industries data, right? Property developers, say even transport, all the way to, say, banks and insurance companies, retails, and so on. How do we, as a neutral platform, right? Science Park being the most neutral platform, we're not profit-seeking. So how do we really start to push towards a blueprint for smart city, right? An actual smart city, starting on the data level, right? And then do innovations on top of that and so on. To also what Ricky was saying earlier, after we announced a collaboration with Hysan, we actually got a lot of inquiries from other property developers to say we want to do the same thing, right? So I think definitely Hysan led the whole industry to say, how can we as Hong Kong really push forward on prop tech in general, right? And really be the next leader in the world, right? So that's quite inspiring and amazing.
Yeah, exactly. I see Hong Kong should have a full potential to be the Asia's prop tech hub. So good luck to the collaborations between HKSTP and Hysan Development. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Ricky. Thank you, Eugene. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for your time today. If you could please stand and pose for a photograph.